Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And before I say what we're talking about and what the topic is going to be, Mindy, all the way from Georgia, is celebrating a special occasion today. So I want
Yes.
to honor her by saying a blessed birthday for, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I won't say the age.
You can.
But
You
I think
can.
it's just amazing that she decided to give us her time here today, even though it is her special born day. So thank you so much for being here. And
Thank
I'll let you
you.
say hello. I just want to press live on Instagram and then I will read your bio. Go for it. Over to you to say hi.
Oh, well, hi. I guess I didn't understand for a moment there, but yes, thank you. And yes, it's my 50th birthday today. So I'm 50 years young, or like you said, 5.0.
Yes.
And I'm happy to be here. I am.
So am I. I mean, when I first saw online your work and what you do, I was so curious and intrigued. So I can't wait to jump into it today. And then just to start off, for those that have just joined us, welcome. Don't hesitate to join in the conversation as always. Whether you're on, let's say you're on YouTube, I saw a few people were waiting, Instagram or LinkedIn, please just pop your comments and ask questions. Definitely, I think Mindy's open to that. And then I would read just some of the topic of today, the return of the divine feminine. So I quite like this topic. And I want people to understand the divine feminine is not just about women. It's not only about the woman and her divinity. And I think we're going to ask our guests to tap into some of that. I'll read some of what I've got here. After a stroke in 2023 that caused central vision loss, she was determined to heal her body and regain her sight. Through painting, she found her pathway back to wholeness. She created an acrylic collection of the 22 major arcana of the tarot, a visual and spiritual journey mirroring the hero's journey. And for those that know the caption, shifting from grudge to grit, grace, gratitude, it was born from living this hero's journey, right? Or as she prefers, the heroine's journey, right? With each card she painted, she wasn't simply creating art, she was living it. Each piece became an act of healing, transformation, and restoration. Through this process, her sight returned. She named the collection The Return of the Divine Feminine, not yet fully aware of what was being awakened within her. What began as recovery became remembrance. So, return back home to self, a reclamation, if you want to call it that, a deep reactivation of intuition, inner wisdom, and embodied feminine power. And from this journey came something even more profound, the reawakening of the Sophia Christos. So, welcome, Mindy. It is
Thank
really good
you.
to have you here.
Thank you. I'm
And
excited to
I
be
am
here.
feeling honored that you're here on your birthday. So, please, over to you. Tell us, what was going through your mind and heart and having experienced the stroke. Let's start there. And maybe before the
Yes.
stroke is just the after, the effect of something else that caused it. What was happening in your life? Share
Well,
with us.
I'm sorry, just to give a little backstory so that you have a bit of context.
Yes.
I experienced a near-death experience at age 5 years old and then had a fever of 105 for 4 days, which could potentially kill somebody.
Oh,
Months later, I had encephalitis from chickenpox that didn't break out, and I was having out of body experiences exploring the hospital. And of course, I didn't know that that's what was happening as a child. I thought I was dreaming or imagining or whatever, but
yes.
there would be enough consistency in the things I would tell my mom that she started to go and would validate and then come back and ask questions. So at a very early age, I had changes to my neurological system, which all these years later, 45 years later, I specialize in treating people with PTSD and trauma from an energetic point of view first. So, of course,
Oh,
the clinical skills are involved and all of that, but I help my clients recognize how their traumas have been part of their journey And they, at some point, find meaning in the experiences and find some purpose. And they recognize that because of the trauma they've gone through, their intuition has been magnified. And it's been fear based because of the trauma. And once you remove that energy of the trauma and the person really starts to heal, what they find is they start to self love. And in that self loving, you shift that intuition from fear based, which is very contractive and limited, to expansive. And you're not searching your environment for a threat. You are looking at, guidance and connection and a sense of spiritual embodiment. So it's been quite the journey through childhood and into my adulthood as a very sensitive, intuitive person. And, I had some help with that growing up, but I had, just like everybody else, a lot of the conditioning of the world. I had religious upbringing, and some of that, I will say, was helpful, and a lot of it was not. And it is part of my story too. And I can't
Yeah.
say that I'm not grateful for that. So in 2023, I was in a relationship that was, the best way I can categorize that, as a very karmic relationship that was meant to be, so that what was still unseen and unhidden within myself could be revealed, and when it's revealed, you can heal, right?
Yeah.
So I had COVID, and I had developed a cyst on the pericardium around my heart, and I had to have heart surgery. So they did one of the top, from my understanding, top 3 most painful surgeries that you can have. They went in through my ribs and halfway across my body.
Yikes.
Yeah. And so they sent me home with really subpar pain management, is the way I'll put that. And it was the intensity, I believe, of the pain that I was experiencing. And I noticed that in that pain, I was going into a primordial state of consciousness, very similar to where I went when I was having my son 24 years ago.
Mm.
Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm just
Oh, okay.
mesmerized. I'm listening,
So,
listening.
at first we didn't realize that I was having a stroke because it wasn't temporal. And most people think, one side of the brain paralyzed on the other side of the body, you try to
Mm.
smile, the face droops. So I didn't have those symptoms. What I had a history of a good handful of ocular migraines before. And so that's what I thought I was having, because I had the visual distortion, the crescent, on the field of my
Mm.
vision, and the geometric, vibrating shapes. And then I
Yeah.
had, the spot of light. But what was a little different is I was having sort of this rolling sort of blackness, as if you were looking through a screen, almost like
Mm.
a screen on a window, but it was
Yeah.
moving. And then I started with a real bad headache, and uh, we even called 911 at one point and had them come out and evaluate. They didn't think about it being an ocular migraine either. So they gave me something for the nausea I was experiencing and gave me the option to go to the hospital. But during that time, people were still, we were still dealing with some of the uh, final waves of COVID, and the hospitals were pretty overrun in my area. So I chose not to. So I missed the golden window, so to speak. And when my
Yeah.
home health nurse came, a couple of days later, she was like, "Go to the hospital, go right now." And I was like, "Why?" She said, "You may have had a stroke." And I'm like, "What?" So, yeah, so they did some testing, confirmed that I'd had it in the occipital lobe, and that's your visual cortex.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I had central vision loss, which, it's not like blackness in the middle. What it was is, it was as if my brain was just filling in blanks with the colors. So when I would look at a person's face, they didn't have a nose and they didn't have part of a mouth, and it was kind of humorous. um, yeah, I mean, everybody looked kind of like aliens, so I was, it was kind of funny, but it wasn't funny. And
Yes.
so, with the peripheral vision I had, I was looking at my phone and, doing a bit of research to find out, how is this rehabilitated and how do you do it, especially if you've missed the golden window. And what was recommended was doing visual arts. So I had friends bring me art supplies, and I had always enjoyed doing a little bit of art, but I was never really,
Mm.
good. I was okay, and I
Me
enjoyed
neither.
doing it, and that's the main thing, is to just enjoy what you're doing and go with the flow. But as I started drawing and doing a little bit of watercolor, I was like, this looks different than usual, and I thought, okay, maybe it's just my eyesight's being weird or whatever. So, after 11 days of being in the hospital, going through all the tests to find out why I had the stroke, um, I definitely was ready to get home. And when I had this brilliant idea of, what if I did a whole collection of paintings? That would be fun. So I had the idea to paint the tarot, or the tarot. It depends on how you say it. It doesn't matter. And I had discovered somewhere in that time period that, I had always been able to read oracles, and was fascinated with the tarot, but it got a bit complicated for a while. So I put that down and just went with oracles. And I got to looking at some information and discovered that they're rooted in angelic frequencies, because you have
Wow.
the four suits in the minor arcana, and this is where our modern day playing cards come from, right?
Yes.
So the suits in the tarot are the cups, and Gabriel, the archangel Gabriel, holds the chalice or the cup. You have the swords, which are the spades in playing cards, and Michael, Archangel Michael, holds the sword. You have rods or wands, which are the clovers in the playing cards,
Yes.
and Raphael holds the caduceus. And then you have Uriel, who holds the pentacle or the coin, which is the diamonds
Yes.
in the playing cards. So I was like, wow, I've tapped into angelic frequencies before, but I didn't really make the connection until then. And I was like, hey, can you guys help me paint this collection? And so it was interesting how it all came about, because from beginning to end, the major arcana tell the hero's journey. It
Yes.
starts with the
Yes.
fool leaving his home or community or an old self behind,
Yes.
and with pure innocence and enjoyment of the start of the journey, he or she, which I turned it into feminine, all feminine except for the emperor, um, goes on this journey not knowing what perils are going to come, not knowing what the challenges are, not knowing that there is a challenge ahead, right? And
Mhm.
progressively through all of the cards, he gains each of the four tools, or
As
she.
the
I'm going to turn
guide,
this around
the
and just say
mentors.
she, okay? So she goes through different experiences and learns different lessons and masters different, all of the four different, what many people would call magical tools.
Yes.
And each one is sort of an archetypal energy, if you think about it, that is, and the hero's journey is the thread underlying every story you've ever read,
Yes.
every
Yes.
movie or TV show. Well, I can't say every TV show, but I'll say most every movie, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so in the end, of course, that now let me back up just a little bit. Throughout the journey, there are extreme challenges, there are beautiful moments, and then comes this life altering experience, the tower, where the old self or the ego is not necessarily dead or killed or anything like that, but it's like a falling away or an implosion, and a
Yes.
falling away of the parts of the self that no longer serve or don't serve that higher self that the hero is moving toward.
Oh,
So there's this big, the slaying of the dragon kind of moment, right? You kill the enemy, but you're really not the enemy. You have to make your ego your friend.
yeah.
So in the
Yes.
end, right, the hero emerges victorious with all four magical items, ready to return, um, with as a new self, as a new being who has had this life experience that really altered so much about him or herself, that they are almost unrecognizable when they return home, right? And
Mm.
they're and then there's the adjustment time. We won't go into all of that part, but yes, as I painted each one, it's as if my life was synchronistically aligned with the meaning of each card, down to the I had the breakup conversation while painting the tower and the devil card. And I'm
So
not
on
kidding.
point, apt.
I'm sorry, what?
I said it was pretty on point and apt in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for those that don't, I mean, for most, I think the audience that listens in here are, they are quite spiritual. But for those that aren't spiritual, if we had to break down the hero's journey in a simpler form and that's
Mm-hmm.
understanding, I think it's what you said early on. It's in most movies.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter would be a good one to
Yes.
point out as the hero's journey, right? And the idea is you're going from this ordinary world into the unknown, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't realize you're going to go into this abyss, into this
Yes.
darkness. And
Yes.
those where the road of trials is happening. And in that road of trials, I suppose, we don't realize that we're not actually alone. We don't only need to slay the external dragons or monsters or demons. We've actually got to look at what's internal, and
Yes.
that's the ego. But I like what
In
you
the
said, and
shadow.
we are very aligned there because I always say, don't don't blame the ego, don't shame the ego.
Mhm.
Name it to tame it, yes,
Yes.
but
Yes.
that's about it. You name it, you tame it, and you integrate it, and you almost acknowledge and thank it because
Yes.
if it wasn't there and it wasn't giving you these messages, you wouldn't be elevating and becoming more expansive, to use your words. So,
Yes.
who were your guides along the way besides the deck of cards and all the archetypal roles? Who else was that influence in your life?
Well, I had from early childhood a deep connection with um, whom I referred to as a child as Shua, and that's the way I would say it.
Sure,
Shua, and it was a sing song. And
sure.
his girl Miriam, and that's how I would say it, Miriam, like a sing song.
Mhm.
And I think one day around age 10 or 11, I was sitting in church with my family, and I think the pastor must have said Yeshua, and I went, and I started putting it together, and I was like, wait, are they talking about Mashua? And of course, we didn't hear much about Mary Magdalene, and what little we did hear didn't sound very favorable because, she had 7 demons or whatever. Well, really, it was he cleared her chakras.
Mm.
Like,
Yes,
what the
yes,
heck?
yes.
Anyways, so,
Spot on.
throughout my life, there were times where that connection was very powerful and important. It wasn't, until that 10, 11-year-old age that I realized that, wait a minute, like what I'm hearing is sort of true based on what I know, kind of. And
Mm,
I
mm,
recognized that I didn't know all, but there were times when I was like, I need to argue with the preacher. Like, and I had to hold, I really had to hold on to the pew to not stand up and argue. It was I was afraid that I would impulsively do so.
yes.
So, yeah. So off and on, I had these strong connections, interface for some of you younger generations, with the spirit of these two individuals. And looking back on that, they represented the divine masculine and the divine feminine in union as the, new
Yes,
being.
yes.
And and this is my personal opinion, the whole mission was interrupted. You know,
Mm,
was it
mm,
prophesized? Yes. But there was also more they were going to do and didn't get a chance to do that.
sure.
And so you could say some of that came through their children. Yes, they had children.
Yes.
Um, but I also grew up with a lot of a lineage of very strong, what I call disempowered, powerful women.
Mm-hmm,
Because of the
mm-hmm,
enculturation, they didn't get to have the voice that I get to have, and I take that seriously.
mm,
But I also grew up with my great grandfather next door who was Native American. And so I was
mm,
taught some different perspectives on some spiritual things. And of course,
sure.
I didn't realize as a child that I was being taught anything special or anything
Mm.
that, and I thought other kids were learning the same stuff. And, it was a big sort of, I guess you could say, culture shock to find out that no, these other kids are not having the same kind of experiences. They're not being taught some of the same things I was being taught. And I would think, well, maybe they're getting taught other things, but I didn't think much about it.
Mm. Mm.
So I was also taught to honor my ancestors and recognize that I could feel them. I could sense their presence. I could have a direct conversation with them. And some people in my little small rural Southern Baptist conservative town
Mm.
looked at me sideways when I would say anything,
Oh.
and this is why why I had these voiceless, disempowered, powerful women, was all of the conditioning over time for thousands of years at this point, where even the thought of being intuitive in a small town like that was potentially of the devil.
Woo woo. Yes.
Woo woo. And we still have a lot of that,
We
unfortunately,
do.
but
We
but
do.
it's changing. The more we have access to knowledge and internet and can meet people all around the world and be face to face with them, the
Hmm.
more we start recognizing the Me Too, the more we start giving permission slips to other people to say, that dream that you had that then, came true, that's not that odd,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
time doesn't really exist and your consciousness can do a lot of things. And we know like this much in comparison to this much about consciousness. So for me,
I
I
wanna
think I
tap
just
into.
had this. Go ahead.
Sorry, you were saying I interjected.
No, go ahead.
No, finish
No,
your
it's okay.
thought,
Go
and then I'll
ahead.
come. You were saying
Uh,
something about
well, I was saying
dreams.
I just had this deep, rich spiritual life that I didn't recognize was necessarily spiritual, right? Until I was older. But I had this deep connection in this almost like a spiritual integrity that I still to this day cannot fully explain, that
Oh man.
gave me guidance, gave me hope, gave me resilience, helped me get through some of the most challenging and traumatic experiences and devastating losses, as well as amazing mystical experiences and various awakening after awakening after awakening. So yeah, that's kind of what was with me, but dampened to a degree by various factors at that
Yeah.
time in my life.
Well, I can resonate to some of what you're speaking about because even as a young girl myself, I always felt that I was different. And well, you
Thank
get
God,
labeled,
or
you're
goddess.
too much of this and you're too little of that, and all
Right,
those
right.
labels and the
Yeah.
systems that we get pulled into, right? And I remember as a young girl also that my intuition is the one thing that was heightened. And I was referred to as being this old soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yes.
know that I now have a language today for it. But as
Yes.
a young girl at 5, as you say, we don't know. We don't
Right.
know these vivid dreams that you're having, that's actually, through the dreams you're being guided. In fact, I
Mhm.
stopped you early on because I wanted to talk about dreams. I have a
Okay.
friend who is very near and dear to my heart, and she's always got dreams, and she's very spiritual and at a heightened level. Now, I'm of the Islamic faith, and so is
Mhm.
she, but we love the Sufi path. So
Mm. Yeah.
Sufism is very much on that heart-centered, purifying your heart, being connected with soul, and
Mhm.
being at that heightened level of
Mhm.
spirituality. So
Yes.
you really got to be listening, right? Listening and letting go of the noise. And so I wanna find out by you, what messages came early on and even throughout your life through
Mm.
dreams, and can you still
Mhm.
interpret your dreams
Yes.
today?
Yes. Yes, I can. I don't remember as much these days, and one of my shamanic mentors gave me good advice about that and gave me some insight as to why that is. And I'll come back to that in a
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
But yes, even as a child, I had a lot of lucid dreaming where I would realize that, hey, I can fly. And I would just jump up and fly. I would fly over mountains and I would fly around my home. at night.
Wow.
So, I encountered beings that I would say they probably presented themselves in ways that didn't make me feel afraid or anything.
Mm,
But
mm,
um, as I got older, I had some hypnagogic experiences that were quite frightening. And if anybody's ever had
mm,
that sleep
mm.
paralysis, presence in the
Yeah, I've
room,
had
that
the
in
worst.
it is really scary, but I now kind of understand what that really is about. But the intent, it's not really the fear as much as it is the intensity of the energy of what we're experiencing. So, as a child, I had dreams that would come true. I had these claircognizant moments that would just kind of like, it would just spill out of my mouth. And I remember at 6 years old going, did I tell a lie? And then I would tap back into the memory of a dream, or I would tap into something bigger, and then it would quickly be validated, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay, so I didn't lie." And as a kid, we just kind of accept these things unless they're very scary, right, or traumatic.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and growing up, I often had dreams, and these were the ones that were kind of unnerving. I would have dreams about close loved ones and family members right before they would die or in that time period of transition. And
So
I
like a
would,
premonition.
yes, and I would know, and I would wake up and tell my mom, and I'd be like, I dreamed about so and so in a cemetery in a white church, white tombstones, white,
Right.
you know, suit that he had on, and everything was white. And she would look at me, and I'm like, yeah. And then within probably 24 to 48 hours, we would get the call. So
Wow,
that
getting
part was
goosebumps.
kind of like not so fun. And as an adult, I
Exactly.
have been like a not by choice necessarily a death doula a few times where I was in the presence and was like right place, right time kind of thing.
Hmm,
And
hmm.
I was there when someone transitioned out. And now I've told source, God creator, I just want to catch babies. I want to be on the other end of life now, right? So, I did have a lot of precognitive dreams. I had dreams where I went into various, what I understand now, various astral realms, dimensions,
Mm.
met people who I met later in life, which was interesting too.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
And then
So
when you make it, well, I know I'm jumping now, but
it's
let's finish
okay.
the
I'm
dream
jumping all
part.
around too.
Let's finish the dream part. And I want to come back to one part in particular because I experienced it, and up until today, I don't understand it. And I never went to research it, but that sleep paralysis where
Mm.
you are awake but you can't do anything, and that energy that's so intense. So why does that happen to us?
Well, I think there are a few reasons. You know, and what triggers it can vary. Some people will
Mm.
say sinus pressure. I know for me, it has happened because of sinus pressure.
Yes.
Exhaustion and sleep deprivation can cause it too. Certain medications or substances can cause it, illness. So, really, what it is that we're going into a state of consciousness that our my understanding is our frequency shifts to this specific bandwidth. And that
Yes.
bandwidth is almost like a portal, a doorway. And it's not like we're going anywhere. It's more
Yes.
like it just opens where we are, and we're experiencing these different dimensions where we are. And there are some dimensions where there's very common experiences with people cross culturally, across time, belief systems and all that. So when
Yes.
you have something like that with a thread that's so strong, I'm like, please investigate, right? So
Mm.
I've heard some people call that presence that you feel in the room a watcher. And I've recently come across some information that kind of makes some sense as well. It's almost as if there's this intermediary kind of energy or presence that connects us with our galactic kin And it's a very like shamanic kind of state of consciousness that you're in so that you can access all these different realms. And so with some of these galactic dimensions and galactic beings or kin, I like to call them because they're brothers and sisters too. The frequency is so high that our physical bodies, even in the state of sleep, our nervous system, it's an overload feeling. And it's
Yeah.
so intense and so unfamiliar that we panic. And because there's this presence or this watching, this idea that something is there that we don't know what it is, the unknown is one of our biggest anxiety provoking
Exactly.
experiences. And because it's kind of shadowy and it feels unpredictable kind of thing,
Yeah.
it's the combination of that with that intense frequency that leads to panic, and it feels like a very negative experience. Now, on the other end of sleep, you can have a similar state of consciousness, which is called a hypnopompic. We have a hypnopompic experience on the waking side of things. And those experiences are usually very pleasurable. A lot of times they're very sensual and intimate and fun. You can make yourself go back into it if you're really good at that. So yeah, that's sort of my take on it. That's at least where my understanding is right now. And that's subject to change, of
100%.
course, but with having the experiences many times and then coming across information as I use my discernment, and what resonates with me makes sense to me. It helps me understand, and it may or may not resonate with somebody else, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I've also met people in my life that you've explained how you have dreamed with somebody and then they end up transitioning or crossing over. And then I've heard people say that they can actually see people that have crossed over that is with us,
Yeah.
right, in this realm. And
Yeah.
so I do believe these exist, but it's very for the layman's person on the street, it's like it's the woo-woo and it's the
Mhm.
judgment that will come from it. Like,
Mhm.
what are they even talking
Yep.
about? You
Yep.
know, how do we make this less fearful
Yeah.
and more connected for people to say that if you just tap into it, we're
Yeah.
gonna cross over. When
Yep.
we do all of us crossover, we're
Mhm.
not yet all fully united as a human race. I mean, whatever faith or denominations
Mhm.
that you come from, but there's a waiting period that when you cross over, you're not yet going to wherever you land up
Yeah.
without having to call it out. But how do we make people feel safe and okay
Yes.
that this
Well,
is
I think
a
bridging
reality?
the gap comes with
Mm,
tapping into the person's own experiences. And if you can like get the person to, recall something that's very common that we don't think is quote unquote paranormal. And just so everybody knows, paranormal just means para means outside of or beyond,
yeah.
right? So beyond the norm. So who decided what the norm is, right? So we
Yeah.
could have a whole podcast about that.
I
But
think we can.
yeah, yeah. So, I use with some people, I often say, have you ever been in a place where you heard your name called and you turn around and there's no one there, or there's no one who seems to be
Oh,
trying to get your attention, right? So why did you hear that?
yeah. Yes.
Right? So if the person tries to say, well, I guess I made it up in my head, and I said, well, where did it come from then?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Right? Right. Because that kind of experience is one that we can experience both internal and external at the same time. Now, as a psychotherapist, if I have somebody come to me and they're hearing voices and, they're telling me that they don't know what to do about it,
Mhm.
one of the things that I do is I ask, number one, what are the voices saying? Because if it's a lot of negativity, that may be psychosis. And are
Yeah.
the voices external or are they internal, like inside your mind almost, right? And so the person who's not psychotic can have both. Many people experience it more internal than external, right? But if you
Mm,
start with something that somebody else has had that experience of, but they can't explain and they can't deny, right?
mm,
Use
mhm.
your logic, and you're going to wait, they're going to go into circular logic about it
Of
until they
course.
realize
Of
you're
course.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
So
starting with something that is already familiar to the person is what makes them start to go, hmm. And that's the key, is to just get people to think beyond, just a little beyond the conditioning that
yeah,
we have had for thousands of years.
I mean, I think you're right. It's about the beliefs and the condition and the deep-rooted
Yes.
programming. I think what I wanted to bring into the conversation earlier on was psychedelics. So a lot
Okay.
of psycho or psychotherapists or psychiatrists, they use it as a
Mhm.
modality to
Yeah.
actually tap into the person, right?
Hmm.
To
Hmm.
go and find root cause.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something you do in your work today? Because I know in some parts of the world it is
Hmm.
banned. You can't.
Right.
What's it called? Psilocybin? I think that's the correct medical.
Psilocybin. Are you talking about
Yeah,
mushrooms, psilocybin
yeah, yeah,
mushrooms?
yeah, yeah. That's the
Well,
correct name.
there's different substances that can be used, and it's really a preference of the individual doing the medicine. Well, it's called plant
Yeah,
medicine, and if
yeah.
done properly, it is very effective. I have certification to prepare somebody for a plant medicine experience
Mhm,
and
mhm,
then help them integrate the experience afterward, but not administer anything or be there while they're
mm,
doing that. If they're going to do it, I always suggest to my clients, go somewhere where you can learn the culture and the ceremony and why
yeah,
they do it the way they do. And then as we learn that together, even, I will prepare you for what that is. So
yeah,
with ayahuasca, people get very sick. You can get very
yeah.
nauseated, throw up, have
I've heard.
diarrhea. And so learning how to breathe properly in a spiritual breath, what we call life force breath, helps
Hmm.
the person get through that phase, so without having to be sick, because even just being sick can kind of taint the person's journey at first. And
Mm,
if they are trained and taught how to breathe through moments that might feel unnerving or a bit scary right at
yeah.
first, and it's not necessarily a scary experience unless you go into it with a lot of fear.
Or
um,
trepidation, yes.
right. So there's different substances from different places around the world, depending on that culture. The one that is legal here is ketamine, and
Interesting.
I know some practitioners that are able to, provide that.
Hmm.
What I see is, personally, I don't see it as effective,
Oh,
because there's no
interesting.
sacredness in that
Mm,
experience
mm,
unless
mm.
the person and that therapist brings some kind of sacredness. But it really is environment, purpose, intention, um, and the way that it's done and how the person is prepared for it that really makes the difference.
Yeah, yeah. So let's come back to these cards. When I saw
Okay.
them, some examples of them, are you able to share some examples on the screen?
Uh,
Um, and maybe even your
I'm
first
not sure
one
how to
that you
do that
did. Have you got the physical cards with you? Yeah.
here. I think the best I can do is send you some pictures later and you can add. I don't know. Okay, we're back.
Okay. Okay.
I
Our
know one thing I
bandwidth
can
seems
do
to
is I
be
can pull up some.
our bandwidth seems to cause a delay in our audio coming backwards and forward. We'll deal with that. That's I see there you go.
Okay. Are we good now?
Okay, you're back. You went away for a
Okay,
moment.
good. So one of the best things I can do is just maybe hold up some pictures from my phone.
Sure.
So let me see. It might take me just a second to get to them because that was 3 years ago.
Wow.
Whoa, there was a couple there. I thought no. So as I'm looking, I'll say this. As I painted each card, there was definitely this experience of feeling almost infused with with some energy that just was so joyful. I was grateful. I had a lot of gratitude in being able to restore my vision and paint like a master. Like, what happened? How did this happen? Right. So
Yeah.
here, for example, is my rendition of the Tower card.
Yes, I see it.
right? And then let's see. Here is my hermit. He's sitting in a
I
tree
see
with a
it. I
book.
see it.
Yeah.
It's just
Um,
phenomenal. I think it's
here's
just amazing.
here's my version of the star. And each star, there's 7 stars in the sky and they're golden, but they have a hint of each color. They each represent the 7 main chakras.
Mm, mm.
And let's see. Here's death.
In the metaphorical sense, people.
Yes, meaning the ending of one thing so that the beginning of
Yes,
something else can happen. Um, let's see. Here's my strength card. Let me turn this one sideways.
yes. Did you have these printed in a physical deck of cards as well?
Not yet. I would love to. If anybody wants to produce them, let me know. But yeah, I've had a lot of people ask that question, and I have entertained the thought of it many times. Um, the whole collection itself, the actual paintings, I've sold some of them. I wanted to sell all 22 at one time, but I don't know who's going to buy 22 paintings at one time anyway. So I sold them as people said, "Hey, that one really speaks to me. How much would you take for it?" I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll sell it." So I still have a few, but I have pictures of all of them.
Yes.
So, but I have not done the minor arcana. So I can't do a full deck, but I could do and just, you know, brand it as just the major arcana if somebody wanted to, or look at it as mark and call it like the arcana archetype cards or something. So I mean, I can
Yeah,
get
I
creative
mean,
with it.
I think there's a lot in your journey and your story, so some of the intuitive wisdom and the depth that you've had since a 5-year-old can be poured right back in. Because if this is a return of the divine feminine, but at the same time we've said that it was actually more of a remembrance.
Yes.
And in that remembrance, you have got something, you're the wise sage right now in the hero's journey, right? And so you've got a lot to offer. So
Yes.
maybe that's something I'm going to uh, give you as a challenge to explore. Some people
Yes.
write books, but you've got
Hmm.
this beautiful gift and
Yep,
you've
I'm
got the
writing one
intuitive
now.
wisdom. And so there's an opportunity for you to create something that people can really energetically um, feel the vibration of it, to be putting it that way. Because I mean, I have some of the Sufi cards, and it's beautiful to see some of those images, and then the core oracle messages that come from it. And my best friend and I, we always end up when we go away together for a weekend, and she'll say, "Come, I brought the card. Let's draw a card." And we went to go watch the super blue moon not so long ago, which was, global. And it
Yes.
was powerful. And then we also did some of our faith-based cards,
Hmm.
the different names of our God and how the
Yeah.
different attributes come from that. And
Ah, lovely,
I just
lovely.
think that there's an opportunity here for you, an untapped opportunity, and you
Yes.
can make it as sacred as you want to,
Yes.
right?
And for me, it was really about clearing the cobwebs to see what was just always there,
Mm,
what was
mm,
already there, that divine essence, and recognizing it. And at first, I really, and I still kind of do hit that sacred fury sometimes because
mm,
I'm like, why? Why did this need to be suppressed? Why did this need to be controlled? It
yes.
pisses me off. It really does when I think
Oh,
about
yes.
you know, people who have just created these systems and they've reinforced them over and over and over again
Mhm,
and
mhm,
do so with such horrible means. And when I tapped back into that more divine essence, it was as if I could review all of these atrocities that kept the feminine suppressed. At the same time, I was able to hold that and see that and grieve it and be
mhm,
angry,
mhm.
but
Yeah, and
also
allow it.
stay in my heart, right? Stay in my
Mm,
heart.
mm,
And that was the key, was that the remembrance was, wait a minute, I've always known this, and of course I believed it, but I
mm,
truly am, and we all truly are an eternal being, right? We
yes,
all
yes,
are coming from source, God,
Divinity.
creator, right? And we all have been affected by these systems that are just not acceptable in my
Yeah.
eyes anymore.
Yeah.
And as I began to remember what it meant to be an eternal being, I started remembering why I even came here to begin with. And it was to do this very thing, among many other things. But
Yeah.
it was as if something inside of me not just woke back up as if it was sleeping, more like it just magnified. I don't think I ever completely shut down, even with the conditioning I had. And, I don't think I got the memo. If I did, I didn't care as much. But, those teen years and,
Yeah.
early college days did, I did face. But, and then, of course, I was brought up with modest means. So going to college and having a piece of paper on the wall was really important to my family so that
Mm.
I
Mm.
didn't have to live and raise my family in poverty.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I come from two generations ahead of me of divorced women who had to learn to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So that independence and making sure, not to be dependent was already in my energy field enough that when I started really seeing the matrix for what it is, and I like using that word because a lot of people are using it and get it now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
When
Me
I
too.
started seeing it for what it was, I was like, I don't accept that. I I choose sovereignty. Do I
And
still have to pay my taxes?
Hell yeah.
What do they do with our
Mindy.
money anyways here? So like anyway, so facing that and being able to, instead of having anger coming from the ego, I can have what I call sacred fury. And that comes from all these women before me that were voiceless, all these women that were killed for being women, not because they were being some kind of soothsayer or doing evil things, but just because they were women. And women naturally are drawn to healing and nurturing and all of those things. They're intuitive, we're sensual. And those
Yeah.
are the things the establishments don't like because we're empowered when we do that. When we're empowered, we walk in sovereignty and give the establishment the finger.
Yeah. There's so much statistics at the moment with where it's been said, and this is a global statistics, that women are one, not even wanting to get married anymore. They're not desperately
Yeah.
wanting to get married. A
Yeah.
lot are choosing and initiating the divorce. I'm consciously uncoupled, but I had to experience those dark night of the soul experiences,
Yeah.
right? It took something that became the catalyst for me to remember and to reclaim that sovereignty because in the sense of my marriage, I was performing a
Yeah.
role,
Yeah.
right?
A lot of
And
people do.
many of us are doing that still. They're
Mhm.
performing the roles of who they think they need to be. I found myself applying for a position in one of my dry seasons. Somebody told me to apply for work, and I did. And eventually I got through to the third round. And I met the CEO in the third round because she's the owner of the business as well. And her and I just did not connect. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
found myself losing my essence within that conversation because
Yeah.
I was trying to conform and comply and answer and
Mhm.
respond, and I lost my
Exactly.
purity, my essence.
Mhm.
So we also believe that at the purest part of ourselves, we were never tainted by these constructs and these forms and
Mhm.
systems and the patriarchy that goes with it. And I want
Mhm.
to almost openly say, guys, this is not just about the women that
No.
have lost their essence, it's about men too that are told to toughen up. Men
Yeah.
don't cry.
Mhm.
And how many men statistically today are the higher percentage of suicide is men,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
they too haven't tapped into their divine feminine
Mhm.
side because we are both.
Mhm.
We are
Yeah.
both male and
Yes.
female.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
can relate to being in my masculine all my life because I had to be in survival.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it's hard, Mindy, to reconnect with that feminine side.
Mhm.
And you don't necessarily attract men that can handle you because you are so strong and so you have so much conviction of who you
Right.
are.
Right.
You're in your
Right.
authentic essence that pureness, because you've reclaimed your sovereignty.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
how do we find, I don't like the word balance, right? But how do we find a more
Reunion.
integrated way of showing up in the world
Right.
so
Right.
that we don't create that threat response that you alluded to earlier on, where people are scanning the environment for stimuli like, who's out to get me?
Right.
But where we actually see one another, that
Mhm.
I am you, you are me, we're
Yes.
one
Yes.
human
That's the
race,
key. Mhm.
right?
Yes.
How do we create that?
Well, I think it first starts with recognizing just how masculinized women have been,
Mm,
kind of made to be because of
mm,
thousands of years of the conditioning, because of systems of control,
mhm,
belief systems that people adopt. And women who start to realize that I'm just not happy, I'm not feeling
mm.
fulfilled,
Yeah.
I just know I'm destined for more and I don't know what that is and I feel held back. And, when I read Glennon Doyle's book Untamed, it was like, whoa, that was a really good catalyst also. It was
Mm,
another little awakening there about really stepping into who you truly are without judgment and doing so loving yourself. So one of the things that, has really been missing in society at large is self-love. We haven't been taught how to do that very well. And women get the idea that it's, oh, go get your toes done and get a massage and, things like that.
the
But no,
superficial.
what if it's
Mm.
about, I'm going to trust my inner knowing? And I ask my clients, a lot of times I said, would you hang out with you?
I do that too.
Yeah, yeah, I would and, with our men or the masculine we see in the world, even in the women, the masculine is toxic to a degree, and I'm not saying you guys that guys are bad. That's not what I'm saying here. What I will say is a lot of the negative behaviors and beliefs that we see, and even like the macho-ness and all of that, competitive stuff, is the shadow aspect of the
Mm,
divine masculine. It is the
mm,
shadow aspect due to, and the guy and men don't even realize just how conditioned they are. But here's the
mhm,
beauty. Here's something that a wonderful teacher of mine in the south of France brought to my awareness, and I just absolutely love it, and I see it happen. Okay. So, the typical energetic role of the feminine is the creative, the intuitive, to be the sacred portal through
yeah.
which things are brought into reality, to be that fluid, sensual, right? And the masculine, the energetic masculine, is about providing and protecting, being goal oriented and such. So the masculine is the natural supporter of the feminine. So it's not like we have to clear the shadow of the masculine for them to, no. What happens is because they follow the feminine heals, the feminine leads. As that happens, and we do so from a place of wisdom, which is that Sophia Christos, as we really like, who better to lead a community than a mama, in a household? So as the feminine heals and comes back into balance, comes back into universal law, it's really not as hard as we think because we already are masculinized. It's not like we need to call this masculine back to ourselves or, reignite it. It's really looking at, what does it mean for me to reclaim my flame? That means I walk in sovereignty. That means I walk empowered because my feminine is the one that has been suppressed. And all I have to do is get the shit out of the way and find and see that she's there. She's always been there. And every woman that does that taps into every woman that exists, ever has been and ever will be. And that's a bigger concept to embrace. But as we do that, even our own natural feminine, as we bring her back online and heal, our masculine that we have been masculinized through conditioning starts to heal too. And it's not like a balancing, it's more like a union. Not, I wouldn't even say reunion, because we're a different human. We're not the same masculine feminine energy as Yeshua and Mary Magdalene or ancient Egypt or any of the Atlantis, Lemuria. Let's go all the way back there, right? We are not the same human being. I kind of laugh and say we're the celestial divine human, homo luminous, right? So we become a new transcendent being who is this union of the divine masculine and feminine. And as we do that as the feminine, whether you're a male or female, gender isn't really specific here, but it is more geared towards people who have been feminine and identify that way. As we do that, the masculine will naturally follow. We will start to see disillusion and gentle. Now, sometimes the Kali needs to be involved and we need to, break some things down, but we'll see a gentle movement back towards the men or the masculine desiring the feminine in a proper way, wanting to support her, wanting to protect her because she is that sacred portal, right? And so when you have both where you can be fully in your inner knowing, trusting your intuition, being creative and sensual without judgment on your sexuality, and recognizing I can still be goal oriented. I can keep a schedule. I can learn how to do for myself, provide for me, right? And my family, regardless. And I can learn to, if I need to, defend myself. And most women, we can defend ourselves with our words. We don't have to get violent.
Totally, totally agree with that. And I love what you shared now. I think it's really about when I think about some women, even in the corporate world, in that landscape, they become the alpha female. And what I've even see happening, females competing with one another because they're so in their masculine
Yes.
that,
Yes.
they're fighting not only for that seat at the table, but the voice at the table, but that seat is so like vital to them. And then the voice, because now they've got their male counterparts and the other alpha females to work with. And I know we can probably do an entire live stream. I know we've only got about 3 minutes remaining,
Oh, no.
but I do think that if we just come back to center, right, and come back to what we were meant to be serving in the ways that we were supposed to. And again, not gender, we're not bringing in genders here as such, but to make sure that the woman needs to be able to be nurturing and love and show kindness and be
Respect.
that pillar in the home, because there needs to be a level of equality as well and civility within that, because she doesn't need to be leading, but she's naturally the leader of the home. In the same way, like the man, the woman needs to acknowledge that he can bring his softer side to nurture their relationship, to give love and nurturing to the kids. But by his essence, he's meant to take the lead. And so I find it so flawed, the men of today, Mindy, and I'm not pointing a finger. I wonder, and I'm curious, and I'm really fascinated. Have we shifted because women have become so much driven to be in that masculine state and empowered, but in the wrong level of empowerment, that they just taking a step back? Because a lot of women I speak to are really struggling with their partners that need to step up to lead, and be effective. And I know we're at the end of our segment today, but let's get some closing out nuggets that you want to share from your own journey, or what do you want to leave our audience with today? If you had to say to them, these are the gifts and the opportunities from whatever we've just shared here today.
Well, I would say, a lot of times the masculinized feminine is in that shadow aspect as well. And so that healing the feminine, bringing her back online, acknowledging and respecting who that she is, loving who she is, will naturally heal that shadow, will dispel or alchemize that shadow aspect, and her internal masculine will then, do that reunion. When the masculine in the feminine is so shadowy, that competitive nature with the masculine in a relationship that is in shadow masculine, is I think a lot of the reasons why we have so much conflict and divorce in relationships. And so, as women, as we come back along as the feminine, and I don't care if you're a male in a male body and you present as feminine, that's fine because we do have both, right? But a lot of our men are not in touch with that feminine. So, how are they going to learn what it looks like? How are they going to know unless we stand up and we are the examples and say, I don't have to have power over, I can be empowered. I can be embodied. I can feel my intuition in my body. I have body wisdom, right? Women can lead. I don't think that it's just men are supposed to be the leaders. I think depending on what the situation is, depending on what the community specifically is, some feminine are much more prepared to handle leadership in some arenas where men are in others. And so, or the masculine, right? So it's really about finding that mutual, and in some ways, in sacred scripts, you hear equally yoked, right? We come back to this new higher frequency because we are rebalanced, we are reunited in a way. And the toxicity leaves. So, what does that leave us with? So, here's what I'll say: the return of the divine feminine, the crystal Sophia, the Sophia Christos, is how we have new earth consciousness, new, what I say, Nova Gaia.
That's beautiful. Because Gaia, whether we want to call it universe, source, whatever we're referring to as Gaia, it's the source, right? Coming back to source.
Yes, yes. And many see that as in this earthly plane as part of a greater galaxy or universe, right? So that living substance, energy, whatever, spirit, right? That's within all, right? It's the collective of all of it in my mind that I call God, source, creator, right? And there's
Yeah.
such a force behind it that is still mysterious. And we tap into it, we tap into it, we tap into it. And when we tap into that part of it that is us,
Mhm.
we recognize our true divine nature.
It's beautiful, Mindy.
Mhm.
Mindy, it has been a delight
Well, thank you.
listening
I've
to
enjoyed
you.
it.
I was captivated by all of your words and everything you shared. You have a beautiful journey. You have a lot to give back. And having come back home in the remembrance of that version, I can't wait to see what's going to unfold in your journey. So thank you for gracing us
Thank
with your
you.
presence, with your humility, your beautiful essence and energy that just illuminates through the screen. So, and plus it's your birthday, so you even
Yes.
shining a bit more. So, so thank you for being here. I'm going to end the live, but stay with me for a moment and I'll do a short debrief and then we'll say goodbye to our guests. I haven't acknowledged everyone that's normally here, but thank you for being here on Instagram and on YouTube as well as LinkedIn. I saw a comment, great session, love it. Thank you for being here. I see you are frequently checking in on the different sessions. So we are grateful that you're here with us. And until next week, see you again, same time. Bye for now.